In today's video, we're going to give you some tips to help those new players that are coming to your table. Welcome to the Blue Dragon Guild, a channel all about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Baron.
And I'm Mackenzie.
With the popularity that D&D has gained in the last several years with like Critical Role and several other things that you can find on the internet, there's a lot of new players flocking to the game, which is great. And sometimes, as an experienced DM, you're going to have trouble with those new players, getting them used to the game. In some instances, you'll have a group you've already been established for a long time, and you may have forgotten how to implement a new player. Probably not, but
you always want to be ready.
You always want to be ready, yeah. So we're going to give you some tips that our group, the Blue Dragon Guild, came up with that you can use to help get your new players ready for the game.
I feel the first thing you should always do when having new players show up, come join the game, always have a friendly, open table. I mean, there are times when you've had a game that you've played for years upon years. Maybe you played even just 4 or 5 months, but you've played a lot in that time period, and you're like, well, we don't really want a new player, we're only starting to go this. We can understand that, there's sometimes you have different games that are going on.
Yeah.
But I've experienced and seen there are times where it's easy to have somebody new, and then maybe they're gone. Maybe you have a player that has been in it for 2 years and they just don't show up. I've done that myself plenty of times where I'll do 3-4 weeks in a row, and you don't see me for 2 weeks, and I come back. I mean, the DM has all right to not let me back, but it's not like it's ever that hard to really weave something or somebody into the story.
Yeah.
The only time I feel it could be a challenge is like, maybe you have some battles ready and you didn't know this guy was going to show up this week. Like, no clue.
Yeah.
You sat down. Hey, I brought my third cousin's wife's brother. All right, well, that's cool. Yeah. And, he sits down to play. And maybe you weren't ready. Maybe you just didn't have enough creatures. But that's DMing skills to have on the spot.
Yeah.
Just for the slight change. Because making him enjoy that time may lead to a bigger game later, a sub-game even.
Now, in the instance that you are prepared for this new player, one thing that a lot of groups do is they have a 0 session before they start a new game. That's not something that we necessarily implement because we have played together for so long, but in the instance that we do introduce a new player, it's kind of inferred that it's the DM's responsibility to get with that player, have a one-on-one 0 session, be it in person, video chat, through Messenger. You need to get them prepared for the game.
Right.
That way, by the time they get to the table, get introduced to the rest of the group, they already have a basic underlying idea of what their character's gonna do, who their character is, and a little bit of an idea of everybody else in the party. You don't want to give too much away, I feel, but you want to give like a warning like, hey, Mackenzie's playing this little 6-year-old goblin. He's gonna prank you and do some crazy stuff to you, but it's okay. You just gotta roll with it.
Another thing that I think as a DM you could help new players is make sure, when they sit down they're experiencing something new. They've probably only heard that you sit down, roll some dice, play around, do little actions that you want your characters to do, which is fine, and we understand there's some things in the game, if you go by straight rules, it can't really happen, or it's really hard, or, don't do this to change the rules, like, hey, I'm going to do 6 backflips and automatically land it and then stab a guy. Well, it doesn't just happen,
Yeah.
You don't really want to tell a player, no, if you want to attempt that, but, you know how difficult it would be in real life in 6 seconds? Supposedly to do 6 backflips and stab somebody? I personally only get 4. But I think if you can be able to get it done, it'll be, kind of let them be open. Let them do the things they want to in a reasonable manner. Just don't flat out be like, no, it doesn't happen. No, don't play that. No, don't do that. Let me help you. You got your strength real high on your fighter, but if you get 18s on both of these, dex and this, and then take this item and put it... Don't overflood them with things from the beginning. Keep it simple. Maybe just say, hey, there's only 3 races. Hey, there's only this to pick. Here's just the player's handbook. Start with this. Oh, you really liked how that played? Well, here's this. And give them big giant selection to pick from. Just at first keep it simple, because like anything, people get overwhelmed and they'll walk away.
Yeah, I agree. It's really easy to just flood people with too much information. You can do that with anything, D&D especially, because there's so much that's there. Start them slow. And that kind of plays into this as well. Do your best to read your player, be it at the table or during your one-on-one session or zero session if that's what you do. You can tell when people are confused, when they're uneasy about something, even when they're not having a good time. So don't be afraid to, kind of pull them off to the side during a break and say, hey, what's going on?
Right.
I mean, that's what you're there as the DM to do, is to make sure everybody's having a good time, yourself included.
Right.
So, I want everybody to have a good time, and I feel like I've done a bad job, if even just one person didn't have fun. Right. There's nothing wrong with talking to your players, because you need to.
Right.
Figure out what's going on, figure out what they're confused about, what they're upset about, and then go from there, try to fix it.
The good thing, like even to tie into that, because I've seen this in a few games, not in our playing of it, but you get to the people. We know each other pretty well. We know Dave. We know all them. We've played with them a long time. I've sat down at tables before, like the first time I played 5th edition, and the DM's like, hey, don't mention anything like if you don't have this certain parent in your life or this kind of thing affected. Because somebody at the table, that was a real life thing to them. And you don't know if it's going to affect them in some sort of manner as it is. Yeah, it's fun. It's a make-believe world, and you can separate that. But there's some things in a fake world that, have been real, and it's just somebody they didn't come to expect to experience that while being there. So it's always conscious into that. And I think that could help on session 0. Be like, hey, give me something that you don't mind. Are we open to everything? Are we open to just, what? We can make it work. It's not going to affect the drastic story of something majorly. If it is, just change the story. That's all it's going to be.
Yeah, it's an easy fix.
Earlier I spoke on a little bit, and I'll elaborate more on the don't control how they do their character. I've heard of people playing and it'd be like, I don't write a great backstory with my characters. Like, he did this and this. I basically let the backstory happen as I'm playing the character. That's how his story starts, and then I weave it in to make things work, because helps the DM, and I don't really know a backstory of what I'm doing. It's never really been a huge thing. It's like, he showed up and born and he fought stuff. Okay, I'm not the greatest at it. Maybe you are, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
I've been at places where the person's like, what's your backstory? Well, I'm a dwarf and I was a stone cutter, and my family came out of the mines and I'm looking for adventure. And I'm not joking, the person actually went, here's an actual backstory. And had something and went home and was like, give me a little bit more. Here's your family, here's your lineage, that's your new backstory. And I'm like, that doesn't, that's not fun. I can't alter from this at all. I guess I'm playing this and I got to read a 3-page paper and get graded on it. But, I'm not a fan. And the other thing with playing a character, I'll build a character. I have, one of the ones I'm playing now, Tuog. One of my favorite characters, Keyleth, is a changeling. But I also hate playing that character. Just because of the way I play it, and play it with 3 different personalities, I like it. But I don't want anybody to come and be like, hey, you're taking this, X levels in this and X levels in this. If you dipped in this too, then took that. And I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Not everybody in the world, not everybody in fantasy is the super awesome hero. It's not always the maximum as can be. I've played games where if every character was to the max, I'm not beating the first character on the screen. It's it doesn't happen. The party's what makes it good. If I was on my own, maybe, but there's nobody, not even in history, that you can go and it's like, this guy had everything. Or he wouldn't have got beat. It's just, I know it's a fantasy. I know you try to make your character great and like a movie-esque, but I never liked that. I've played it, and I'm like, I build it this way. If it works, cool. If it doesn't, cool. I don't want over time 40 people have done this and seen this as the best. Because I've played games. I've looked at things and been like, well, did you ever try this before? Well, no, because this is always straight. Well, this actually works pretty good with this. Well, yeah, but I just, I read online 40 times. That's exactly how it worked. Yeah. Try something different. Change it. You may stumble upon something else. It's not, blatantly written out. Take this path, and it's the maximum. So there's always a mix to things to find.
Touching back on the backstories that you talked about, as a DM, that's a great way to get them involved in the story. With the character you have named Gororo, you just kind of gave me like a 2-sentence synopsis of your character's backstory. It was like, he was in a wizard school, he left. And from that, I developed a whole thing. Like, your teacher was mad because he was trying to turn the school into some military force, and he thought you were going to like sell his secrets. So he's put a bounty out for you, and Tommy doesn't know this, but no, never mind. He does know this. Tommy does know this. I forgot I revealed that last game.
Oh, good. I just don't forget.
But
anyway.
Your teacher and Tommy's creator are actually the same person. It's just, years down the road. Tommy's a Warforged, by the way. There's a ton of fun you can do with that. I mean, Dave and I talked about it in our using character backstories video, which you can find right up there. And you can... There's just a ton of fun you can do with that.
Right. I'm not saying, like I said, not all backstories are bad, but there are times when people just leave it open or they can't write one, and I'm glad it works. Or you're like, well, I can use this to build my story a little bit long, make a new bad character. And I'm like, I did nothing, but there it is. Yeah. And
with a lot of new players, you notice they're not big on doing the backstory because they're new to the game. They don't know. So getting into the rules side of things, they obviously aren't going to know any of the rules.
Right. Yeah.
So we lowly recommend making them memorize every single rule.
That's true.
When it comes to players learning the rules, the best approach that we have found is just learn as you go. Anytime anything comes up, you can just say, all right, this is how this works.
Right.
And it's good because it gets the whole table involved in that player's introduction, get into their growth into the game. So that way, that new player really gets the group, the community feel that everybody's coming together to help them learn, which is very important, at least in my eyes.
It's good.
It's also really important to let them know it's okay if they mess up. Because they're going to. We still do after 11 years of playing.
Right.
Like, every single game, like, we'll mess something up. And it's like, hey guys, when we did this, that was wrong. My bad. So going forward, this is how we're going to handle it. And every single DM does this. Every single player does this. There's no perfect DM. So, experienced, brand new, don't worry about it. It's going to happen.
It's like, there's still times where I DM very slightly. I'll be like, all right, well, let's make a spot check.
Yep.
That doesn't exist in 5th edition, and I still want it done every time. I still have trouble, some of the rules stuff that I still don't know. Like, I remember casting Sleep on Elves and be like, yeah. And it's like, all right, it didn't work. Oh, yeah. Not really a rule, but kind of just I forgot. Like, why did I even attempt that?
Yeah.
So, obviously when you play D&D, most everything you have is written down on a character sheet. Always help the new players with that. I know you can just say, once again, here's the book, don't give them all the information, or you probably got to give them a lot longer than a week to show up to play, unless they have nothing else to do to look at it. Always help them say, hey, you need to roll for your health, you need to do this, make these checks. Help them, because backgrounds, when I have a lot of trouble selecting those too, because there was times when I just left them. Everybody would be like, what's your background? No clue. Didn't know I was supposed to pick like criminal, merchant, noble, something like that. So I still need help with that to, what money I got, what items, where to find those, where to spend my money on. Always just kind of help them along the first time, because after a while, you'll get it. There's still a few things that I'm like, like I always try the passive perception thing, or what my hit die to recovery is. I always forget those, but it's still good to help somebody along, but once again, also don't control all of it to have. Like, they want a water globe or whatever the big thing is. It's like, well, you got the money to buy it, that's fine. I'm not going to stop you, even though I don't know, when have we ever used this? But hey, they might like it, they might enjoy it, they might find something you didn't think about it, not just be like, this item's useless, this is useless, this sword max damage, that. let them experience.
Yeah.
Let them go through. I mean, that weapon's not going to last into the end of the game. I've never had weapon 1 last till, level 16. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Like you said, the character sheet, I think, is probably one of the more intimidating things. Mm-hmm. So, in that, going back to that one-on-one zero session, or zero session period, walk them through it. Everybody else in the group, I mean, they'll know how to make their sheet. So, as the DM, you can spend your time focusing on, all right, this is why we do this, this is this, and so on and so forth. And that'll help get them familiarized with different things. Like, all right, these are the skills. This is why. This is an instances when we would use this. Not necessarily, going into like the deep nitty gritty of the rules there, but just give them kind of a basic idea. One other thing I think is important is don't rely on them to ask the questions, but also make sure they know it's okay to ask questions. Right. Because, like I talked about earlier with reading your player, you're going to see when they're confused. So you can say, hey, what's going on? Real simple.
Yeah. Help the player, or have them determine their own play style. You don't have to control and be like, well, you got to just be an amazing role player, or it's just not going to work here. Or, well, you got to be really good at combat and know when exactly to use the combat and know what are the best tactics at all times. That doesn't happen. Like, I try to use a lot more of my playing while in the battle. Like, I try to figure out what people are doing, what spells will work, what will control this, more so than the role-playing part of it. Maybe a little different person to person. Some people just don't do role-playing at all. They're like, hey, wake me up when it's time to roll some dice and smash some stuff. That's just what it is. Some people love the role-play aspect and, don't really care for the fighting. Would rather be doing little tasks, adventure, gathering information. So have those parts in the game so, everybody can do a little certain thing. Like, we had the role-playing in ours where I loved it, where we were controlling and opening a tavern. It's like, well, this was great. We could sit here and do this for another 3 hours and I don't need to find anything.
Yeah.
It just happens. There's certain parts that'll grab people in for the group and it's will make it work.
And it's not going to happen first session.
Right.
It may be 3 or 4 sessions down the road when they finally get the feel for how they want their character to be, who they want their character to be, and what they're going to do while they're playing that character. So, another really good idea is to use a buddy system. Mm-hmm. Pair that new player with one of the more experienced players. Have them sit next to each other. Have them have the experienced player help the new one out. Because, they're experienced. They know what they're doing. They can real easily say, hey, this is this kind of thing. Or, hey, that's that kind of thing. Now, you want to make sure, like Mackenzie said, you don't want it to be, you should do this, you should do that, you should do that. You can just give them suggestions.
You don't need 2 people playing, one person playing 2 characters. Yeah. Just, if they need help, it's like, okay, well, I need everybody to make a perception check. New player, maybe not sure what dice to roll, because you might have 4 or 5.
Just be like, that one.
Then be like, okay. And then they can do it.
Yeah, that way it can take a little bit of stress, a little bit of worry off you as the DM. And one thing that Chris's group in high school used to do, it was whenever there's a new person to the game, the last new person has to teach them. Yeah. That way it reinforces the rules.
And it helps that person to keep fresh about everything to be able to make sure they're teaching that person right. Did I say person?
You might have.
Yeah, whatever.
So if any of you experienced D&D players out there have any good advice for DMs with new players, drop it down in the comments below. And let's get a little discussion going about things that you can do to help new players get into the game.
And if you want more D&D content, be sure to like and subscribe. And always, keep the dice rolling.